car parked on a public street isn't a threat. It isn't a masked man on your porch. It isn't a broken window or a voice in the backyard. It's just a car. That was the logic I used the first time I noticed it sitting across from my house a little after midnight. Engine off, lights out, tucked between two dead patches of curb where nobody usually parked because there were no houses directly in front of them. From my living room window, it looked like a dark shape with a windshield, nothing more. I only noticed it because I couldn't sleep. I had moved into that house 3 weeks earlier after a breakup that had wrecked my finances and my nerves in equal measure. The place was cheap because it sat on a narrow road near a drainage canal and a row of old utility poles, which meant it was quiet during the day and unsettling at night. Every sound carried. Dog barking 2 blocks over, I heard it. Loose metal somewhere rattling in the wind, I heard that too. And when a car stopped outside, even if it wasn't directly in front of my place, I heard the tires crunch over the gravel shoulder before going still. That first night, I stood by the blinds and looked at it for maybe 10 seconds, then laughed at myself and went upstairs. The next morning, it was gone. I probably would have forgotten about it if it hadn't come back the following night. This time, it was there when I got home from work, parked in almost the exact same place. Same size, same dark color, same angle facing toward the intersection at the end of the road. I remember freezing on my porch with my keys in my hand, trying to decide if I was imagining the similarity because paranoia had a way of making ordinary things look repeated. I went inside, left the hall light off, and checked through the blinds. The windshield was too dark to see through. No interior light, no movement. I told myself maybe someone nearby had company over. Maybe somebody was smoking in the car because they didn't want to do it in the house. Maybe somebody had car trouble and was waiting for a tow. There were so many normal explanations that fear felt embarrassing. Still, around 1 in the morning, I checked again. Same car, same stillness. At 2:30, I checked again. Still there. Around 4, I went upstairs to the spare bedroom because that window gave me a wider view of the street. I pulled the curtain aside just enough to see the shape below, and the second my eyes adjusted, I felt that strange drop in my stomach you get when something is wrong in a very specific way. The car wasn't empty. There was someone in the driver's seat. I couldn't make out a face, just the silhouette of a head and shoulders, motionless behind the wheel, pointed directly at my house. I jerked back so fast I hit the wall behind me. For a minute or two, I stood there in the dark, listening to my own breathing, trying to talk myself down. Plenty of people sit in cars. Plenty of people zone out, take calls, kill time, but none of those thoughts changed the fact that this person had apparently been parked outside for hours in complete darkness, doing absolutely nothing, facing my house. I almost called the police then, but I could already hear how stupid it would sound. There's a car outside. There's a person in it. They haven't done anything. They're just sitting there, so I didn't call. At 6:30, when the sky started turning gray, I went back to the window. The car was gone. That should have been the end of it. Instead, it became a pattern. For the next 5 nights, the car showed up sometime after dark and stayed until dawn. Not always at the exact same minute, but always the same place. Always dark. Always no headlights when it arrived, like the driver cut them before turning onto my street. And every time I checked late enough, there was that same figure in the driver's seat, still and patient, as if waiting for something. By the 3rd night, my nerves were shredded. I stopped turning lights on in the front rooms. I started parking in the driveway instead of on the street. I locked my bedroom door even though I lived alone. I kept the TV low and found myself listening more than watching, my whole body tuned to the house like it might warn me if something changed. On the 4th night, I finally called the non-emergency line. The dispatcher asked if the vehicle was trespassing. It wasn't. Asked if the driver had threatened me. No. Asked if they'd approached the house. Not yet. She was polite, but I could tell from her voice that this was not going to be a priority. A patrol car came by 40 minutes later. I watched from upstairs as it rolled slowly down the street, spotlights sweeping over the curb, over the utility poles, over my mailbox, then disappeared at the intersection. A minute later, an officer knocked on my door and told me they didn't see any vehicle matching the description. I remember just staring at him because 10 minutes earlier the car had been there. After he left, I went back upstairs and looked out again. Nothing. Then, at 2:13 a.m., I heard the gravel crunch. It was back. That was the first moment it stopped feeling random and started feeling deliberate. The car hadn't left because the driver was done for the night. It had left because police were coming. I barely slept after that. I stayed in the spare room with the curtain open half an inch, watching the silhouette across the road while the hours dragged by. Once, a branch shifted in the canal behind the houses, and I nearly cried from the adrenaline of it. Every tiny sound felt connected. Every shadow looked planned. Sometime after 3, the driver moved for the first time. Not much, just enough to lean slightly forward. And then the dome light inside the car turned on for less than a second. A yellow flash, a hand, part of a face, pale skin, maybe male, maybe not. Then darkness again. It was somehow worse than not seeing anything at all. The next day, I bought motion lights and a cheap camera kit from a hardware store. I installed one camera above the front door, one facing the driveway, and one inside the upstairs spare room pointed through the glass at the street. I felt ridiculous doing it in broad daylight, like I was building defenses against a thing nobody else would even agree was a threat. But by then, I didn't care. That night, the car returned. I watched it on the monitor first, then through the window. And for the first time, I noticed something I should have seen earlier. The driver wasn't looking at the house in general. They were looking at one specific upstairs window, my bedroom. I went cold all over. The spare room and my bedroom were next to each other, but only one of them ever had a lamp on at night. Only one had movement behind the curtains before bed. Whoever was sitting out there wasn't randomly staring at a house. They knew which room I slept in. I didn't turn my bedroom light on that night. I stayed on the floor in the upstairs hallway with my phone in my hand and the monitor volume turned up. At 1:47 a.m., one of the outside motion lights triggered, not the front, the side of the house. I stared at the screen, confused because the car was still visible from the upstairs camera, still parked, still dark, still occupied. Then the side camera flickered, adjusted, and caught a figure moving out of frame. Someone was walking beside my house. For a second, my brain refused to process it. I kept looking between the two screens, trying to force them into one explanation. The car was still out there. I could see a person in the driver's seat, and someone else was on foot in my yard. I called 911 so fast I nearly dropped the phone. The dispatcher was still asking for my address when the side motion light triggered again. The camera caught a shoulder, the side of a head, then a full body for less than a second as the person crossed near the back gate. Tall, hood up, moving carefully. I locked myself in the upstairs bathroom because it was the only room without a street-facing window, and whispered into the phone while every sound in the house seemed to magnify. I could hear the dispatcher talking, but over her voice I caught something else. 3 soft knocks, not at the front door, directly below me, the back door. I stopped breathing. Another 3 knocks, just as soft, like whoever was there didn't want neighbors hearing it. They just wanted me to hear it. The dispatcher told me officers were close. I remember crouching beside the tub, staring at the doorknob, waiting for the sound of glass breaking or the back door giving way, but neither happened. Instead, after maybe 20 seconds, I heard footsteps outside moving away from the house, then the low scrape of a gate, then nothing. Police arrived within minutes. They searched the yard, the canal edge, the street, the next block. The car was gone before they reached my house. So was the person on foot. One officer found prints near the side fence, but the ground was hard and dry, not good enough for much. They took my statement, looked at the camera footage, and agreed it was serious now. What they couldn't explain was what we saw on the upstairs camera, because while the second person was moving along the side of my house, the car had remained parked across the street the entire time, and the figure in the driver's seat had never moved. The officer replayed that part 3 times. You could clearly see the outline behind the wheel, while my side camera captured someone circling toward the back door. Could be a mannequin, he said eventually, but he didn't sound convinced. The next morning, after maybe an hour of broken sleep, I checked my mailbox. There was nothing inside except a folded receipt from a gas station 20 miles away. No envelope, no note, just the receipt, placed there loose. The timestamp was from the previous night, 12:08 a.m. On the back, written in small block letters, were 6 words: "You should close your upstairs curtains." I moved out that weekend. The landlord kept the deposit. My friends told me I was overreacting. Police never found the car. I changed my route to work, changed my number, stayed with my sister for a month, and eventually got an apartment in a building with controlled entry and cameras in every hallway. I told myself it was over. Then, almost a year later, I was cleaning out old files on my laptop and found the footage I'd copied from the house cameras. I don't know why I opened it again. Maybe because enough time had passed that I wanted to prove to myself it had been real and not the product of stress and too many sleepless nights. I watched the side yard clip first. The hooded figure passed exactly where I remembered. Then I opened the upstairs street camera. At first, it looked the same. The car parked across from the house, a dark shape in the driver's seat, timestamp ticking forward in the corner. But when I slowed it down and zoomed in frame by frame, I noticed something I had missed completely that night. The person in the driver's seat was not facing my house. The head was turned slightly toward the passenger side window the entire time, as if watching something beside the car. And 3 seconds before the side motion light triggered, the passenger side door opened just enough for someone to slip out. The first night Ethan noticed the car, he was too tired to care. He'd just finished a double shift at the assisted living facility outside town, the kind of shift that left your brain feeling hollowed out, and all he wanted was to shower, lock the door, and stop talking to people for a few hours. His apartment sat over a row of old storefronts that had been half empty since before he moved in, with a narrow side street running past the building toward an alley and a chain-link lot behind a laundromat. At night, the area went dead in a way that never felt peaceful. It felt paused, like the neighborhood wasn't asleep, just watching from behind dark windows. He noticed the sedan because it was parked directly across from the entrance under a broken streetlight, dark gray or black. Hard to tell in the weak spill of light from the pharmacy sign down the block. There was nothing dramatic about it. No headlights on, no music, no engine running, just a car where there usually wasn't one. He glanced at it, carried his groceries upstairs, and forgot about it before he'd even unlocked his phone. The next morning, it was still there. That was the first thing that bothered him. People parked overnight all the time, but the side street had meter signs and towing warnings. Residents used the rear lot or parked on the main road where the restrictions didn't start until 8. Nobody left a car in that exact spot unless they were waiting on someone, and nobody waited there long because there was nothing to wait for. No businesses open late, no houses, just his building, the boarded print shop, and the shuttered travel agency with faded posters of beaches, sun-bleached nearly white. He checked again before leaving for work. Same car, windows too dark to see in. When he got home that night, the car was gone. That should have made it ordinary again. Instead, it made him pay attention. 2 nights later, it was back in the same place. This time, he stood at his kitchen window and looked down at it while he ate reheated noodles from the carton. The angle from the second floor let him see most of the roof and part of the windshield, but the interior was a black mirror. He told himself it was probably somebody cutting through town, pulling over to sleep, maybe using the free Wi-Fi from the pharmacy. Perfectly normal. Still, he found himself checking every few minutes without meaning to. Like some quiet part of him had already decided the car mattered before the rest of him caught up. Around midnight, while rinsing out the sink, he glanced outside and saw the faintest pulse of red inside the sedan, a cigarette ember. He froze with the tap still running. There was someone in the car. The ember glowed once, then vanished. A minute later, it returned, brightening just enough to silhouette a hand near a face. He couldn't see features, just proof of a person sitting in total darkness below his apartment, facing the building. Not driving, not getting out, just sitting there smoking and looking up. He shut the kitchen light off immediately. The reaction embarrassed him even as he did it. He was 28 years old, living alone for the first time, and apparently one parked car was enough to make him crouch away from his own window. But once the light was off, he felt a little safer, hidden. He stood in the dark and watched another cherry red pulse flare and die. The timing was strange, slow, calm. Whoever was down there wasn't restless. They were comfortable. At 1 in the morning, he went to bed. At 2:14, he woke up for no reason at all. No sound, no nightmare, just instant, total alertness. He lay there staring at the ceiling, heart already moving faster, and after a few seconds, he realized why. There was light moving across his bedroom wall, not bright, just a dim, shifting glow slipping around the edges of the blinds. Headlights. He sat up and listened. No engine, no music, nothing from the street. He crossed to the window and carefully tilted one blind slat down with a fingertip. The sedan was still parked across from the entrance. Its headlights were off. but a second source of light was moving inside his apartment. He turned too fast and nearly stumbled. The glow came from the hall, weak and restless, sweeping over the floorboards beyond his bedroom door. Like somebody downstairs was walking with a flashlight angled low. He didn't breathe. He just stared at the crack beneath the door and watched that pale beam drift past it once, then back again, deliberate and searching. Ethan grabbed his phone and locked the bedroom door with shaking hands. He called 911 in a whisper and told the dispatcher he thought someone was inside his apartment. She asked if he had heard forced entry. He said no. She asked if he was alone. He said yes. While she told him officers were on the way, the lights stopped moving. For a few seconds, everything went so still that he wondered if fear had twisted something ordinary into something worse. Maybe the glow had been from outside. Maybe from a passing car. Maybe 3 soft taps touched the other side of his bedroom door. Not pounding, not rattling, just 3 careful knocks, like someone confirming he was exactly where they thought he'd be. Every part of him went cold at once. The dispatcher kept asking if he could barricade the room, but he barely heard her. Another 3 taps. Same rhythm. Patient. Then silence. He backed into the corner beside the bed and held the phone so tightly his hand cramped. He could hear his own breathing, and underneath it, from somewhere beyond the door, the faintest sound of movement. Not footsteps exactly, more like fabric brushing a wall. Someone standing there without hurrying, without speaking, as if they had all the time in the world. When the police finally hit the stairwell outside, whoever had been inside moved fast. A door slammed somewhere in the apartment. Then the front entrance below banged open hard enough to shake the floor. Officers took the building apart room by room, but by the time Ethan unlocked his bedroom, they had already lost whoever it was. The front door to his apartment showed no damage, neither did the windows. Nothing obvious was missing. His wallet, laptop, keys, everything was still there. One officer asked if he was sure he'd locked the door earlier. He said yes, but the truth was that he suddenly wasn't. He remembered carrying groceries in, answering a text, setting his keys on the counter. After that, the night blurred. It was possible, maybe, but as the officers cleared the kitchen, one of them called the others over. The deadbolt on the inside of the front door had fresh scratches around it, tight and clustered, like someone had worked at it with a thin piece of metal. Whoever had come in hadn't kicked a door or broken a window. They had opened the lock quietly. The officer asked if Ethan knew anyone who might want to scare him. He said no. But when the police walked him through the apartment one more time, he noticed something they missed at first. On the small table beside the couch, next to a stack of unopened mail, sat a paper cup from the pharmacy on the corner. He had not bought anything from the pharmacy that day. The cup held melted ice and the remains of a drink. A plastic lid, a red straw, condensation still damp on the cardboard coaster underneath it. Whoever had been inside had been in no hurry at all. After the officers left, Ethan didn't sleep. He sat in the kitchen with every light on until dawn, staring down at the sedan across the street. It was gone. He called in sick, bought a cheap camera online for same-day pickup, and asked the landlord to change the locks. The landlord promised to send someone by sometime this week, which was useless. So Ethan wedged a chair under the front knob that night and kept a hammer beside the bed. He told himself this was temporary. One bad incident, one person. Once the locks were changed, once the camera went up, this would turn back into a story he could tell without feeling sick. Then the sedan came back the following night. Same place, same darkness. This time he didn't turn his lights off right away. He stood at the window and stared straight down at it, angry now, wanting the certainty of being seen. After almost a minute, the driver's side interior light came on, only for a second, but it was enough. There was no one in the driver's seat. Ethan's stomach dropped so hard he actually stepped back from the glass. He looked at the building entrance below, empty. Looked down the hallway behind him, empty. Looked back at the car. The interior light was off again, windshield black. Then, from the apartment directly beneath his, he heard 3 soft taps rise through the floor. By the 7th night, Mara had stopped telling herself the car meant nothing. The first time she saw it, she assumed it belonged to someone visiting the duplex next door. The second time, she thought maybe it was a delivery driver taking a break. By the third night, when it was parked in the same spot across from her small rental house with the engine off and the windows blacked out by darkness, she started noticing the way it seemed to arrive after she got home and leave before sunrise. Not before dawn exactly, before she could prove it had ever been there. She lived at the end of a short residential street on the edge of a newer subdivision that had stalled halfway through development. 3 finished homes, 2 empty lots full of weeds, and beyond them a raw stretch of dirt, concrete pipes, and fencing where the road was supposed to continue someday. During the day, it was quiet enough to hear lawn sprinklers and kids a block away. At night, it felt unfinished in a different way, like the street ended too abruptly, and the darkness past the cul-de-sac kept pressing closer than it should. Her bedroom faced the street, so did the front room. There was no way to ignore a vehicle sitting out there for hours. The car was old enough that its shape looked slightly wrong compared to the newer SUVs around it. Low, wide, dark paint that absorbed whatever weak light the street lamp offered. It always parked just past the mailbox cluster near the empty lot, never directly in front of her place, but angled so the windshield had a clear line to both her front windows. That was what made it hard to dismiss. If it had been in a driveway, or farther down, or even facing the other direction, maybe she could have made peace with it. But every night it sat there like it had chosen the exact point where it could watch without looking obvious. Mara worked from home doing billing for a dental office, and after a while the car started bleeding into her days. She checked the street before making coffee. She checked again before showering. She kept picturing it when she was trying to concentrate on spreadsheets, as if it might still be there in daylight, invisible only because she hadn't looked hard enough. Her sister told her to stop fixating. Her dad told her to get the plate number and call police if it kept happening. Both suggestions sounded reasonable. Neither was as easy as it should have been. The plate was never readable from her window, and every time she considered going outside for a better look, some part of her resisted with a force that felt deeper than nerves. It felt like instinct, like the body understanding something before the mind wanted to admit it. On the 8th night, she stayed up on purpose. She turned off every light in the house except the dim one over the stove and sat on the living room floor behind the couch with a blanket around her shoulders and her phone in her hand. From there, she could watch through the gap in the curtains without being seen easily from outside. Midnight came, then 1. The car didn't move. At 1:26 a.m., a light flicked on inside it. Not the dome light, lower, bluish, brief, a phone screen. She leaned forward, staring through the gap. For the first time, she could see there was definitely someone in the driver's seat. Just a head and one shoulder, lit faintly from below. They weren't scrolling, weren't typing, just looking down for a second, then black again. A minute later, her own phone buzzed in her hand, so suddenly she flinched hard enough to hit the side of the couch. Unknown number, no message, just a single incoming FaceTime call. She stared at the screen while it vibrated and pulsed in her palm. The room around her felt instantly colder. She didn't answer. The call stopped after maybe 15 seconds. Then it rang again. Unknown number. This time she declined it immediately and listened. Outside, the car remained still. Her front porch light was off, but enough street lamp spill reached the steps for her to see the outline of the railing through the curtain gap. Nothing moved there, nothing on the sidewalk. The only thing alive in the whole street seemed to be the person sitting in that car and the phone in her hand. A text came through. "Why don't you answer when you're looking right at me?" Mara stopped breathing for a second, then she did the dumbest thing possible. She looked up from the phone and straight through the curtain toward the car, as if the message might somehow become less real if she confirmed the impossible. The windshield was black, no face visible, no movement. Her phone buzzed again. Pretty blue blanket. She dropped the blanket so fast it tangled around her legs. After that, panic took over and things moved quickly. She locked the front door even though it was already locked, checked the back door twice, called her dad and got voicemail because it was nearly 1:30. Called her sister and woke her up crying too hard to explain properly. Her sister told her to call police now, not in 5 minutes, not after another text, right now. So Mara did. An officer came out, took a report, drove the street twice, and found nothing. Because by the time the patrol car arrived, the sedan was gone. The officer was sympathetic in the way people are when they think something serious may have happened, but can't quite see enough of it to act. He told her to keep records, save the messages, install cameras. He asked if she had an ex-boyfriend, a co-worker, anybody with a reason to scare her. She said no to all of it, and that was mostly true. There had been a man 6 months earlier who got strange after 2 dates. Too intense, too fast, but he had moved on when she blocked him. Different car anyway, different age, different everything. Probably did not feel like a strong word that night. The next day, she bought 2 cameras, 1 doorbell camera, pepper spray, and thicker curtains she installed badly and crooked because her hands would not stop shaking. She also borrowed her neighbor's ladder to mount a camera under the eave facing the street. Her neighbor, a retired teacher named Mrs. Alvarez, listened to the story without interrupting and then said something that made Mara's skin crawl. "I thought it was your visitor," she said. "I've seen that car out there before." Mara felt the blood leave her face. "How many times?" Mrs. Alvarez frowned, thinking. "A few, maybe more. I only noticed because it doesn't belong here." "Have you ever seen who was in it?" "No," she said. Then, after a pause, "But one morning last week, I saw someone standing near your front hedge." Mara just stared at her. "Early," Mrs. Alvarez added quickly. "Still dark. I assumed it was you taking trash out until I realized the person was too tall." That night, Mara did not stay in the house alone. She packed a bag and drove to her sister's apartment across town, where they sat awake until nearly 3, watching the doorbell feed and the street camera feed on her phone. At 12:51 a.m., the sedan rolled into view and parked in its usual place. Even from the camera, its arrival was unsettling because the headlights went off before it fully turned onto the street, making the car appear out of darkness rather than from within it. It settled by the curb and went still. Mara's sister said, "Call police again." Mara did. This time she had live footage. This time she thought maybe that would matter. A unit was dispatched, but it took longer than she expected. 10 minutes, then 12. While they waited, they watched the feed in silence. At 1:07 a.m., a figure crossed in front of the camera. Not on the sidewalk, inside the frame of Mara's yard. Both sisters jolted at once. The person came from the blind side of the house, not from the street, which meant he had already been on the property before he moved into view. Tall, hooded, hands down, walking slowly past the hedge toward the porch with the calmness of someone who had done this before. He stopped directly beneath the camera and looked up. The image blurred for a second with the change in exposure, but not before Mara saw enough. He was smiling, not a wide grin, not movie madness. Just a small, private smile of recognition, like he had finally been acknowledged by someone he'd been trying to reach. Then the feed cut to static. Mara was already screaming at the dispatcher by then, telling her someone was at the house. Someone was there right now, and the dispatcher was trying to keep her calm when Mara's sister grabbed the phone and put it on speaker because another sound had started, not from the app, from the phone call itself. A low knocking sound 3 taps at a time coming through the open line from inside the empty house. The dispatcher heard it too, asked if that was the front door. Mara said yes, then no, then she didn't know. The mics on the cameras were distorting, picking up scraps of wind and static, and that same measured knocking somewhere near the entrance. 3 taps, pause, 3 taps, pause. Then the doorbell camera briefly reconnected. The porch was empty. The front door was closed, but something was moving in the narrow sidelight glass beside the door, not outside on the porch, but inside the house. A shadow passing across the entry hall. Mara's sister went pale. The police arrived less than 3 minutes later. They cleared the house, the yard, the empty lot, the construction area beyond the cul-de-sac. No sign of entry at the doors or windows. No person inside. No one on the street. The car was gone again. One officer called her the next morning after reviewing the body cam and house footage together. His voice had changed. It was no longer the patient tone people use when they think fear has filled in the blanks. He asked if she could come down to the station. When she got there, they showed her something from the street camera she had missed in real time. At 12:59 a.m., 8 minutes before the hooded man appeared in her yard, the sedan was already parked across the street. You could clearly see a shape in the driver's seat. At 1:06 a.m., while the hooded figure was walking up her path, the same shape was still visible behind the wheel. And at 1:08 a.m., just after the porch camera died, the passenger side rear door of the sedan opened. Not all the way, just enough for someone small or bent low to slip out from the back and move along the far side of the car, hidden from the camera by the vehicle's body. The door closed. 10 seconds later, the headlights flashed once and the car pulled away. "How many people do you think there were?" Mara asked. The officer didn't answer immediately. "At least 2, he said finally. "Maybe 3. He slid a still frame across the table. It was from 2 nights earlier, from the Eve camera she had installed badly and almost returned because the angle annoyed her. Most of the image showed darkness, hedge, driveway, empty street. But at the extreme edge of the frame, near the corner of her house where the gutter dropped down, there was part of a face looking around the siding toward her bedroom window. Not a full face, one eye, half a cheek, fingertips on the corner trim, watching from a place the street could not see." Mara never went back for anything except what police collected with her. The lease cost her money to break. She paid it anyway. Months later, one detective told her they had found the sedan abandoned in another county with stolen plates and wiped surfaces. No prints, no fibers, nothing useful. She asked if they ever identified the people. They did not. What stayed with her wasn't the car itself, or the texts, or even that partial face at the edge of the frame. It was what the detective said right before she left. They had checked the doorbell logs from the nights before the call started, looking for patterns. On 3 separate nights, always just before dawn, the motion sensor had activated for less than a second. Not because someone came up the walkway, because someone stepped away from the front door.